Benchmarking for our residential buildings for energy usage comes with many benefits, from saving money to energy and carbon to flagging improvements needed that might otherwise go unnoticed, like spotting leaks or other building deficiencies. There are many benefits to benchmarking that even go beyond the building itself, creating economic opportunities and property improvements for municipalities as well. Now, currently, the EPA Energy Star Portfolio Manager program is one of the most well-known benchmarking tools in the United States. It has that 1 through 100 rating, similar to the HERS score that some of you might be familiar with. And scoring 75 on it can also certify our commercial and multifamily buildings to the Energy Star standard. However, with current situations at the federal level, there are a lot of uncertainties in the future of this program. And so I hope you'll join us for this session on some alternative benchmarking program opportunities and services to help keep the benchmarking movement going forward. Now, before we get started, I want to say a big thanks to one of our platinum level sponsors, Rheem. Rheem has decarbonization for our water heating across single family, new and existing homes, multifamily as well. They have the standard 240 volt technology, which has hybrid systems, so backup electric resistance. Or they have new 120 volt technology, which is essentially plug and play water heaters that can be swapped out easily for gas without expensive electrical infrastructure improvements. These systems are up to nearly 400% efficiency. They take heat right out of the air that's naturally in the air like a heat pump does, bring it right into the system. It can be pulled out of hallways and like multifamily projects and closets, corridors, you name it. And it uses refrigerant within the system to heat the water to hyper efficiency. It works great for time of use programs and other programs that need to shift energy off of certain peaks. So you can check them out over at greenhomeinstitute.org/REAMHPWH. Now, on that note, you should also know as of this recording on October 23rd, we are celebrating Heat Pump Water Heater Day. Right up through Heat Pump Water Heater Day, you can enter in to get a free heat pump water heater at advancedwaterheatinginitiative.org/heat pump water heater day giveaway contest. Then you can go to the same website, HPW Day, and learn about and join in all the festivities tomorrow. And as a reminder, there's a federal tax credit and state home energy rebates, which help fund these heat pumps. And you can stay tuned that a little bit later in this session, we'll talk about how benchmarking evaluations can be used and have been used to evaluate these types of systems. All right, so welcome everyone to using benchmarking to understand and improve building performance. This session is brought to you by the Green Home Institute. The Green Home Institute is a nonprofit with a mission to empower people to make healthier and more sustainable choices in the renovation and construction of the places we live. Today, I will be your moderator. My name is Brett Little, and I am the education manager here. This course is approved for multiple continuing education units, including our Energy Pillar and our Certified Green Home Professional designation. AIA Health, Welfare, and Safety may make it applicable to your state-based design or contractor license. Check out the 5-digit Passive House code at the end of this session, as well as the 5-digit ICC code at the end of this session for your continuing ed certificates as well. And so with that, I want to welcome back here Caitlin Rood, who has recently been on one of our introductory benchmarking session, is now joining us to lead this full session. I wanted to remind everyone who's listening in from Michigan that we are still collecting surveys through the end of November about benchmarking, and we encourage you to take that survey at the end of this session. It's a different survey than the CEU survey. We'll send that out in the chat. And so just a reminder to do that. But with that, Caitlin, welcome back to the show. Please take it away.
Great. Thanks so much. Good morning, everybody. I guess I can share my screen. And while I'm getting ready to share my screen, I would make a note that I actually didn't know what Brett was going to talk about before me, but that we have installed hundreds, maybe thousands of those Rheem water heaters in properties. So we have a lot of experience with that and have seen them performing really, really well. And we're really excited to see it when they came out with that 110 volt option, making it, just it's a lot, it solves a lot of electricity problems with that 110 volt thing. So just thought I would mention that. Okay, so thanks everybody for being here. I like to do this deck taking questions as they come. I've got some live demo available. We've got all kinds of ways we can go with this. So I really like to talk about things that I want you to hear what you want to hear. So as you have questions, bring those up. Brett will indicate to me that there's a question, and then this is like choose your own adventure, really. So I'll get started, and then we'll see how things take us. If I just run through this and through the demo, that's great, and then take questions at the end, happy to do that. But if you want to be asking questions as we go, and then we move based on what you want to ask, I can do that as well. Whatever works for you, I'm happy to do. So I guess I didn't put a slide in here about me, but my name is Caitlin Rude and I work for Bright Power and I'm a career sustainability professional. So for my whole career, I've done sustainability in many, many, many industries. And for about the past, oh gosh, what am I at? Maybe 15 years, I've been in the multifamily industry doing sustainability. And I was the National Sustainability Director for Mercy Housing for 8 years, creating their program from scratch, their sustainability program. And then Bright Power was my consultant, and so now Mercy Housing and other nonprofit and for-profit multifamily organizations are now kind of in my portfolio of clients, and so that's my background where I came to this, and been using energy scorecards, benchmarking platforms in general for a number of years. So Bright Power does a number of things, including has a benchmarking software and audits and many other things, primarily in New York. So we use this approach where we use our benchmarking platform, which is called Energy Scorecards, but we use a find, fix, follow approach to find what the problems are using data from the utilities and about the property, and then identify what the problems are and then fix them and then follow up using the benchmarking platform to tell whether or not the work that was done actually fixed the problem or if there are other things that need to be addressed. And then over time, it's kind of like a loop. We just keep going with that, trying to make sure that properties continue to perform. So in general, why anyone would want to be using a benchmarking platform. You can spot inefficiencies in your energy and water costs at your properties. You can use the utility data to boost the financial performance of those properties. You could help to use it to meet any goals you have with regard to the environment. You can make data-driven decisions from this data and potentially gain advantage over your competitors. Energy Scorecards in particular has a dedicated energy analyst and support team, which is a unique feature that either you can be dived into your data or an analyst will always be supporting you, looking at your data, looking for problems and anomalies, bringing them to your attention, gives you the opportunity to identify costs and energy and carbon savings opportunities, measure and verify those results on a weather-normalized basis, gets all of your utility data in one place. You can look at owner and whole building data or just tenant data, where you can get aggregated data from your utility, and helps to meet benchmarking requirements if you have any of those in your local jurisdiction. Just a quick map of where some of those are across the country. Okay, so at the portfolio level, Energy Scorecards can tell you across your portfolio how every property is performing. This benchmarking platform can do this. Like these properties are performing well. These properties are doing pretty good, but not great, or these are ones that are performing bad and that you might want to focus on, looking at your whole portfolio. And then we can dive into an individual property. At a glance, how is a property performing? Um, is it getting a good grade or a poor grade? How is it doing in its end uses, the heating and the cooling and the hot water, so on and so forth. Um, it gives a property grade. So let me see. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that here. So we can look at time periods, we can look at end uses, we can see how the property is metered, all of these factors that are taken into consideration. So now we're just going to stick on this view of a property for a moment and kind of look at all of the things that are embedded in this overview page. First, the property gets a grade and the end uses get a grade. So what are grades about? Grades are quartiles. An A is the top 25th percent of all of the peers. B, C, and then D is the lowest 25th percent of all of the peers that a property is being compared to. So what is it that defines a peer group? And that is that we're looking at what climate zone the property is in. Property type, is it a high rise? Is it a mid rise? Is it a garden style? What are the end use fuels? So what is used to heat hot water? Gas, propane, electricity. What is used to heat space? What is used to yeah, and then who pays for that? Is the owner paying for the heating of the space or the tenant? Is the owner paying for the heating of the hot water or the tenant? Who pays for the water? These kinds of things. Um, and then so once you have all of those things, what climate zone, what property type, what are the end use fuels, and what is the metering configuration, you can determine what your peers are. And all of that is within within the benchmarking platform. So there are benchmarking platforms that aren't specific to multifamily. It's really important in multifamily to have a multifamily specific platform because of all of these factors that take into consideration who's paying what bills, what is the metering configuration. That's unique to multifamily. So all of the information is in the database and then it compares against that database and gives a grade. So that's what the grades are all about, both for the property overall and for these various end uses. One can change the years. I want to look at the most recent year, or I want to look at a last calendar year, or any time that the data is in there for. We can see how the property is performing at a glance over time. This indicates that there's a minimal change in performance from last year, the most recent year, to the year preceding that. There could be an arrow down, a green arrow down, meaning the energy use intensity has gone down over time, or an arrow up, meaning the energy use intensity has gone up over time. We can look at end uses. In this particular example, we're seeing lower grades and higher bills here for the heating of the space. Gets a D grade, and there's $102,000 per year being spent on that, and a C grade for water and 71K being spent. So somebody might be like, okay, based on this spending analysis, these are the areas at this property where we should focus our efforts for trying to find ways to save money. Based on what's selected up here, one could choose owner or whole building. It will tell you what's being shown on this page. Are we looking at common area only or whole building data for each of these things? In this instance, the reason that heating is whole building and fossil fuel base load, meaning hot water, is whole building, is because the owner is paying those bills. So when the owner is selected and the owner's paying those bills, you're getting whole building data, whereas the residents are paying their cooling and their own plug load. So we're only seeing common area here because that's what owner is paying in this instance. One can toggle between energy spending and carbon to get a sense of those different factors depending on what it is that you're analyzing. And then a summary of the spend by the utility and the use type and the carbon emissions, depending on what you've selected up here. Okay, so that is energy scorecards at a glance and how one can understand this benchmarking platform and the data that it shows. There are some reports that are also automatically generated, some benchmarking reports that could be of interest at a high level. So a priority summary report, when we're looking at what are the high energy or water priority properties based on their grades and their spend. This dives in a little bit so that you can see in these reports what's actually being, because that's kind of hard to like, I'm just going to work through this one section at a time. So this upper section shows the entire portfolio for this particular client, you know, so it would be your entire portfolio. And then whether you want to look at potential savings or annual cost. And then ranges can be set for what determines what's a high, medium, and low opportunity. And then we can see, okay, once those parameters were set, how many high, medium, and low priority properties do we have? And then we can see specifically what are those top high priority and medium priority properties and how much money could we save if we were to focus on these properties in this report. And then further down here at the bottom of the report, for those properties, more information. Is it high priority for energy and water? Where is it located? What kind of grade does it get overall? How much is the annual spend for its energy? How much is the annual potential savings? What's its water grade, water spend, water savings? So this is like a portfolio level report that can help someone hone in their benchmarking focus to where are the properties that need the most attention, where we could save the most money or the most carbon if we were to focus on these properties. There's also an example portfolio performance report. I won't go into the details here, but this will show year over year. How is the portfolio performing? Which properties were doing really well, or which properties had the biggest change in performance year over year and showed the biggest drop, to be like, okay, there's something new going on here. So that's what a portfolio performance report is. Measurement and verification report is, all right, we've got a property, and say you did some sort of retrofit of that property that involved energy using equipment. We put in a new hot water heating system that was more efficient. We put in a new HVAC system that was more efficient. We put in LED lighting, something like that, or a combination of those things. So an M&V report will show you over time how is a property performing on a weather normalized basis. So if you put in a new heating system, how did it perform last year versus this year with weather removed as a factor? Because you can't have a really cold winter last year and maybe a mild winter this year. You can't compare that because you won't know if the variation that you're seeing is based on the performance of the new product or the weather. So weather is removed as a factor and then compared of before versus after. How is the property performing now that that change has been made? That's what a measurement and verification report is. And so in this particular example, appliances were changed out. A new hot water heating system was put in. There was a lighting upgrade, and low flow toilets and shower heads were installed. So those were the measures that led to that M&V report. And then we can see from it over time how much has it improved or not. 25% improvement in water and this much, or sorry, in energy, and 100,000 in savings, 22% reduction in water, and 63K in savings, and then similar savings to give you MMBTU and K gallons and CO2 savings. All right, so I wanted to do a couple of case studies. I haven't seen any questions come in. Please know anytime that you want to ask questions, pop in and ask things, and I can go anywhere you want. But if I don't hear any questions, I'll just keep going. And I've got a couple of case studies, and then I can switch over to kind of showing you some things live in energy scorecards to show you some other features that aren't in here. So in this case study, a co-op had an energy audit. They were looking for ways to save in the whole kind of find, fix, follow way of looking at things. And then they implemented the measures that were recommended in that audit, and they improved their property from a C to an A grade and saw a 33% savings in their utility spend, and 100 more than 100K in savings, and energy savings, and then their reduced emissions as well. And the scope that was associated with this is shown over here. You'll have this deck so you can have this information if it's of interest.
Caitlin, just so I didn't miss something, that 91 there on the right, that's the Energy Star score?
This is a New York property,
Oh, okay.
and that might be their grading system, but it could be Energy Star Portfolio Manager score. That might be their grading system.
Yeah,
I think it
just
is.
curious.
I think it is.
Okay.
Yeah. And then another case study, this is in California in particular, although I am getting ready to do this on a more national basis for anyone who's interested. We took from those M&B reports that I was talking about, where you do before versus after of a weather normalized of implementation of projects. We had 11 properties that I had good data sets. Some of them were like 8 years long. Some of them were more like 1 or 2 years worth of data, but all of them had more than 1 year worth of data. And they were in 3 different utility districts, and every one of them had heat pump water heaters installed. Some of them had other measures, some of them didn't. One of them had HVAC, heat pump HVACs put in as well. And so this is an example of some heat pumps on the outside of one of those buildings after the retrofit. And in all instances, the owners were paying the hot water heating in this particular data set. And we were anticipating generally a neutral cost savings before versus after. You know, really what it comes down to when you're talking about switching from gas hot water heating to electric hot water heating, you're thinking about what is the cost of gas? What is the cost of electricity? What is the price of gas? What is the price of electricity? With those 4 things, you can come up with like generally how you expect the property to perform in a post-implementation setting. And as Brett mentioned, we're looking at a COP of 3 or 4, like 300 or 400% efficient performance of a heat pump water heater compared to like an 85% efficient, maybe 80%, maybe worse, maybe better, gas hot water heating system. And so we were expecting it to be about neutral, all things considered, because there's a number of factors that come into play, like when are these being called for and how does that relate to demand charges and all of these things. That's what we went into it with. That's what all of these folks that implemented these measures went into it with. Like we're thinking you're not going to do any better, you're not going to do any worse on cost, you're going to have brand new equipment, it's going to be electric, it's going to be better for the environment. Then we took all of the data out of the M&V reports, just did a simple export from the benchmarking platform. And then this is an example of one of those properties. What this is their baseline performance in blue, and then their post-implementation weather normalized performance in orange for MMBTU. So we had to convert the gas and the electric into MMBTU so that we could compare. And then what happened for cost over that time. So we did that for all of those properties and added it up. And for those 11 properties, what we saw was an average across those 11 properties of a 23% decrease in their overall utility performance. It surprised us all. We couldn't quite believe in the numbers when we saw them. And also a 15% decrease in their utility spend as a result of that change. And a major win in CO2 and in overall cost savings. Good amount of money. We also looked at the most recent year just to see, because some of these were very old, still performing really well in the most recent year, in fact, better. And then we broke it down by utility territory. I know none of these utilities are of interest to you, but we wanted to see if there were differences, because like this particular utility territory has really favorable rates, but it also had a property that performed amazingly. So it's skewed by both of those factors. All right. So that is what I have to say in my deck. I thought maybe I'll pause, see if anybody has any questions, and then I can switch over to kind of a more live look at what energy scorecards looks like.
Yeah, so just kind of getting in, because I saw that 91 pop up there, and looking at, of course, the comparative program being the EPA's portfolio manager. And of course, they're, trying to get everyone right to 75, right, to certify to Energy Star.
Mhm.
So like, I just was curious, where you all think you kind of fall along that sort of continuum of their score, versus what you do. I mean, I saw the A in the 91, right? You get a 90%, you get an A. So that seemed about right.
Right. Yeah, thank you for that. And I didn't talk about that enough in there, which was this two things. One is the crosswalk between Energy Star Portfolio Manager and this particular platform, Energy Scorecards. And the other is that they speak. So at the moment, every benchmarking platform in the every benchmarking program in the United States goes into Energy Star Portfolio Manager, which is a free tool by the federal government, has some kind of risk associated with that at the moment, of course. But it seems to be safe for the moment. And it's good that there's a single platform across the country. So most benchmarking platforms just speak to Energy Star Portfolio Manager and get their data from this platform into Energy Star Portfolio Manager. But then the question is that you're asking, how do they compare? And they should compare. I can't say something like a number in Energy Star Portfolio Manager equates to a grade in Energy Scorecard. And the reason that I can't do that is because we have different algorithms and we have different data sets. We're using more, for example, more regionalized data sets to come up with emissions factors than Energy Star Portfolio Manager is. So there are a number of factors that create differences. I mentioned when I was talking about kind of some of my history in multifamily that I was the sustainability director for Mercy Housing. And so what I would do is I would get a report of all 325 Mercy Housing properties. How are they performing in energy scorecards, and how are they performing in Energy Star Portfolio Manager? What did the numbers look like compared to the grades? And anytime I saw something that was like, we're getting an A in energy scorecards and we're getting a 50 in Energy Star Portfolio Manager, I would ask my analyst, what's the difference here? What's going on? What's wrong? Is there a data issue? Or is there some other reason that this is performing differently in these two portfolios? So one
Mm,
would generally expect them to align
mm.
where you would think maybe 75, 50, 25, 0 kind of thing, but they don't always exactly. So you could expect it to have a generally align, and when it doesn't, you would want to say, what's going on here, and ask your analyst.
Yeah. Um, and kind of going off a little bit of Energy Star, but just like what is the, I guess, the floor here on buildings that can, benefit from this particular program? Because I can think of certainly all the way down to its lowest level, you have, the existing single family home. And I know that the way Energy Star dealt with that is at one point you could actually put that information in the portfolio manager, but it was a lot for a home. So they came up with this, hey, it's portfolio manager.energystar.gov PM/hey, I just dropped it in the chat. So very simple thing for the single family people to kind of plug in their data and see where they're at. But thinking of like, I guess the question is number one, do you have something here for single family? But even if you kind of scaled it up a little bit, maybe you're a landlord, you own multiple single family properties or a couple, smaller attached. Like, where is really the floor that someone can use this particular tool?
It's really not meant for single family,
Yeah.
so that would definitely be a floor.
Yeah.
Um, After that, it's any multifamily property would be appropriate in
Like
this tool.
two units stacked. I mean, you get into a home and if someone put a unit above, it becomes multifamily, right? And it's like, but it looks like a home, right? It
Right,
it functions like a home,
right,
but would it be something that would be able to be measured?
right. I mean, one could do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, there might become a matter of economics,
Right.
about whether or not it makes economic sense to be putting a two unit property into any benchmarking platform.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but certainly the data could, all of those things that we talked about, where is it located? Who's paying what bills? How is it heated and cooled? All of those things would be taken in. What kind of building is it? Would be taken into consideration, but it certainly is designed for multifamily, which
Mhm.
I mean is generally, I kind of feel arbitrarily defined as 4 or 5 units or more. A lot of
Sure. Yeah.
times
The
that has to
code.
do with data
Yeah.
privacy kind of
Yeah.
thing. If
Yeah.
you're trying to get whole building data from a
Yeah.
utility, they commonly won't give you anything less than 5 units at a time.
Yeah. And no, I'm glad because there's the code, and most codes do look at 5 units. And I'm thinking of course, and this gets to my next question, the green building certification programs like lead, specifically, they, will identify up downs, right? You could have two side by side units, that's single family. The second you put it up above, now you have multifamily, have a whole set of different rules. And so I get used to that world of multifamily, but you're right. From a code standpoint, it's typically, 5 units gets appended into the commercial program, right? And it becomes multifamily. But on the question with green building, I know, like Enterprise Green, they require benchmarking. It has to be done to certify. So for folks, following us doing those programs, something has to be used. I think National Green gives out a point. We're including benchmarking now as an optional pathway in our Green Star program. LEED gives a point, but I'm thinking of LEED O&M here, operations and maintenance, this big focus on improving our existing buildings. And if I understand right, they are looking at certain performance targets for energy and water. And I'm curious if there's an O&M alignment with your program where you can figure out if you're on track for LEED if you want to, flip a multifamily building.
Interesting. Um, I feel like on track for lead is a much bigger question than just what one can get out of a benchmarking platform.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I meant, specifically like obviously there's a lot of things in lead, but there's a sort of like you have to use this much energy if your building is this or this much
Right,
water, right?
right.
That's the,
Certainly one
where
could
I'm focused.
assess that in here.
Yeah.
It's a good point that there are multiple programs that require benchmarking. Fannie
Yeah.
Mae green loans in particular require energy scorecards, not just benchmarking, but energy scorecards
Oh,
as
wow.
the platform.
And that's countrywide for their, what is that, that insurance mortgage premium reduction? Or am I thinking of Freddie? I get them all mixed up. So,
Oh, right. I don't know. I don't
yeah.
know. But I know that Fannie does that and we hold that contract and that it just every one of those properties comes in. So there are various types of programs like that where the data is required or it could be used from this platform to answer that.
Mhm.
Certainly, it's very valuable in audits
Mhm.
for knowing before versus after a performance that's projected because the
Yeah.
utility data is already there for evaluation. And when we do audits, we put the data into our platform, whether or not they're going to use our platform, we still use it to make the projections for their future performance.
Right. And that reminds me, like, I think of, a lot of these at what they call ASHRAE level 2 audits, which, if I understand right, just like anything, ASHRAE is a bit of the Wild West. Like there's the intent and then there's the input side. And the input side seems to be like anybody has some kind of system that can do it, right? But I'm curious where ASHRAE level 2, people who are doing ASHRAE level 2 assessments of their building, where that's in alignment with this program, if there's any connection at all.
Oh boy, you're stepping into kind of something that's outside of my purview.
Yeah.
But it, the audits definitely are required. I mean, there's different level audits. You don't have to do an ASHRAE level 2 unless you have to do an ASHRAE level 2.
Right. Yeah. There could be
But
certainly a lower scale, right? Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But always it's good to have and then in ASHRAE you have to have I think you have to have your some format of data that allows you to forecast what the performance is going to be.
Right. Right.
But I don't have a good sense of how that varies
Yeah.
among different groups.
Well, let me ask it another way. I know some programs have, asset, their asset rate, right? Like you're getting what's the features of the building? And here now it's going to tell you your predicted usage and your savings.
Mhm.
While others like this one, they're just purely looking at your usage, but some integrate the two together. Well, we can get, the utility bills, plus we can get clues of what's going on in the building, and then they come together. Is there an op ability in this to say, hey, we were in that building and we saw these actual features, like these efficiency features?
Mhm.
Does that then impact sort of the forecasts that this would make if you were to make an improvement? Like if you saw all Energy Star appliances, you could put that in there and it would kind of change your simulation a little bit.
Interesting. It would change the audit analysis outcomes.
Yeah,
Um, and they would be using the benchmarking data
yeah.
to be making those forecasts. So they both have to come into play. Yes.
All right. Well,
You have a property that you consider one property and it's four buildings, and the benchmarking program considers it to be four buildings, then it has to be reported, or four properties, then it has to be reported four different times.
hmm,
That happens in some places, like
yeah,
DC, I think, is a place where that happens.
yeah.
Um,
And is part of the effort, is there part effort? I know like certain utilities, right? They kind of set these things up and then it's really automated from there. Is
mhm.
there sort of an effort of onboarding new utilities for these kinds of programs to just bring in that data? Or is that part of the conversation? Does that, if one utility kind of automates it all, does that pave the way for everybody else? But it's really then on the first project to get that automation set up?
Mm. We pretty much work, I mean, I certainly can't say we work with every utility in the
Mm,
United States, but like a lot of them. So certainly we have that, just
Mm.
we have that kind of in the bag at this point.
Yeah.
There is a step of getting it started with a new property for sure. Um, there are different ways that we can gather that data,
Mm.
and we determine that during the onboarding process.
Mhm.
So, and then once it's flowing, usually it's flowing. A lot of times that happens with
Mm.
utility logins. So if those logins change, it breaks that connection and that has to be updated. But once it's flowing, it generally just keeps coming into the system.
Mhm. Um, and well, and that reminds me because of course you've got those situations where it's, the owners um pay all the bills so they have the access, or you have the situation where the tenants are paying all the bills. So then you have to have some kind of special laws in place in certain places where, the owners have the rights to that data. So in the events where you don't have that, is there's like situations where someone like a property owner literally has to go out and get signatures collected to release the rights for all this before they can get this information?
Yeah,
Or is that something this program does
good.
automatically, or?
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit. So, generally speaking, if a property owner does not have a benchmarking law, they don't tend to
Hmm.
care about the bills they don't pay.
Sure.
Um, Sometimes they do if they're signed up for something like the Better Buildings Challenge.
Right.
Um, and it created a huge problem because they wanted whole building data. Maria Vargas was in charge of the Better Buildings Challenge program, and I was in DC having meetings with her about here's
Hmm.
the problem. You're requiring whole building data, and we can't get whole building data from all of the utilities. And so we're never going as a country, unless you are in a public housing authority that is in a city that has a benchmarking law. Those are the only goal achievers you're ever going to find, because the utility districts don't tend to provide aggregated tenant data unless there's a benchmarking program in their area. Almost exclusively that is true. And so
Hmm.
for anybody that has a portfolio that is national or outside of a utility that has a benchmarking program, you're almost definitely not going to be able to get aggregated tenant data.
Hmm.
So if you're not in a program like the Better Buildings Challenge and you don't have environmental goals that
Hmm.
you feel like you care about the tenant data, you probably don't care about the tenant data. If you
Hmm.
do, you're going to have to do what you said, get individual authorizations, and it's a massive lift that
Yeah.
usually people decide the juice isn't worth the squeeze. So outside of those districts where tenant data isn't available, owners are usually happy with their own data. And
Sure.
that's what they can control and that's what they track.
Right, right. That makes sense. Well, why don't I know you're going to get in and show us some of the things behind the um in the system, and then we can kind of jump into some more questions from there. So,
That's good. I think I also saw a question come through about like commercial sites, and commercial sites can also be tracked in this software. So that is an option as well. And then let's see. All of a sudden my mouse, there we are. All right. Um, Everybody's seeing the scorecard dashboard. All right, so this is the landing dashboard that we looked at the very beginning of the deck. And this should be familiar, right? This is an entire portfolio of properties and how that whole portfolio is performing. And then one could dive into a specific property, and this is the one that we spent a whole bunch of time on, looking at these various elements of an individual property's scorecard. And then over here, when you're at a property, one has all of these choices for what more they could do with that property. And I'm just going to look at a few of those together with you. Um, there is a year-to-year comparison where for a given property, a you could choose from a drop-down menu of like different calendar years, or you could create a custom time frame if there was something in particular you wanted to look at. And then you could see, how is this property performing over time from 2013 to 2014, 2023 to 2024. How is the property performing year over year? And in this instance, the property is doing worse in every instance. Its energy use intensity, that is the energy that it uses per square foot, is doing, and then you see this per cooling degree day and heating degree day. So we're talking about weather normalized data. We want to remove weather from this analysis because that's not what we're trying to figure out. How's the building performing, not how is the weather changing. And so once you've removed weather from from consideration, this property is doing worse, and it's doing a lot worse on its electric base load and on its water use. What is happening? Why is this property all of a sudden using so much water? So you could look at a property over time and see if there's major changes. This is similar to what we were talking about earlier in that second report, where we can come up with a report of what are your properties that have changed the most from last year to this year. And then have you say, I wonder why that is, or I know exactly why that is, and then look into fixing what the issue is. For every property, you can look at its individual bills. In this particular example, there's one electricity bill, one gas bill, and one water bill. There could be multiple bills for any property, electricity, gas, or water. And then usually there's like an aggregated tenant data account. And then if you were to click into the edit mode of, say, the electric account, for example, for every individual account, you can see its performance over time. So these are all of the utility bills, one at a time, loaded into the platform. And it'll show you the start and end date, what the blended rate is. That means that this is what they're taking the total kilowatt hours that you're using and the total cost, including fixed fees, and giving you a blended rate. This is not a cost per kilowatt hour. I mean, it's showing per kilowatt hour, but it's a blended rate. What your use was for that period of time in kilowatt hours, if there were any delivery charges, and if there were demand charges, that would be in here. And so you can see, what is the property using, or sorry, what is this account using over time? And so if you're trying to figure out, hey, we've seen an electric increase, then you could go and see if it was across the board, or if it was limited to one or multiple accounts, what your use is, what your cost is, and what your cost per kilowatt hour is. Are you seeing a change because you're using more? Are you seeing a change because it's costing more? And is it a dollar per kilowatt hour issue? Also on this page, there is always a paperclip right here. And if you were to click on that paperclip, it would open the actual utility bill. So the actual bill gets loaded into here. And I'm realizing I forgot to pull up one report that I want to pull up, so I'll do that as well. It's called the monthly report. It's been a minute, so it's going to make me re-sign in. And while that's pulling up, I'll show you an M&V report. So we looked at a different view of this from in the deck we were looking at. This is what it looks like in Energy Scorecards itself. So in this particular example, this building, they're very easy to enter. You just say, or your analyst can enter this information for you, like what was done. There were things done with the building envelope, with heating and water in particular. There was a ceiling of the roof or attic. There were heating controls were put on. There were ceiling improvements in the duct system. A new boiler was installed and low flow devices were put in. You can put in the predicted cost if you want. You do not have to enter that information. It just gives access to more reports. So then what's being shown here is baseline versus actual on, again, a weather normalized basis. So this light blue line is how it was performing before implementation, and the dark blue line is after implementation. Whenever you see things like this sine wave, you're looking at something seasonal, which makes sense, right? We're talking about a heating system. And so you're going to see these big differences in your savings during the heating season. And then like here, where in this particular instance where it came above, well, this has nothing to do with heating at all. But if it did happen in this season, in this heating season, you would start to wonder what's going on. Why is my boiler not performing? You can see overall how much dollar savings and what percent energy savings. You can look at spending or use. You can look at just electricity, just gas, or water. And you can look at baseline versus actual, how it's performing, or you could look at predicted, how is it performing against what's the baseline versus what's predicted, and you can look at what's predicted versus how it actually is performing. Those are all choices for looking at MNV reports. And then the monthly report. So in this particular example, there was only one electricity bill, one gas bill, and one water bill. But that's very uncommon at a property. Usually there's multiple of those bills. And so this report takes all of those bills, bins them by month, because utility bills don't come in like January 1st to January 31st. And so it prorates it based on how many days were in the month, and then bins them and then aggregates them for all of the electricity or gas or water for that particular property. You could look at the last 3 years, or you could look at all years of data that are in there, or you could turn on and off any years that you want to for any particular analysis. And it'll tell you for that month how many kilowatt hours were used, what was the charge for that month among all of your utilities. This is not weather normalized. And what were the delivery charges and what were the supply charges. This is all downloadable. And so that's what I did in that analysis is I downloaded this data. Sorry, that's what I did in this analysis was I downloaded, this is also downloadable. I downloaded this data to do that heat pump water heater analysis. But this is also downloadable. Sometimes you want to do analyses on this data so you can just export this into a CSV or an Excel file and work with that data. So just a little bit of a finer grained sense of diving into data within energy scorecards. One can have access to all of this, and we have clients that play with this, literally are in their account every single day looking for things and trying things. We have clients that are never in this and rely completely on their analysts to come to them with problems and issues. And, this is where we're seeing changes. And then we have everything in between. But you have as many logins as you want so that you can look at your data and see how it's performing. I think that's about it for that sort of live demo. If there's any other questions or comments, happy to discuss.
Yeah, great. Well, let's start getting into the official Q&A questions here. And before we do, just a real quick reminder that yes, this session is being recorded, and you can access the recording here. Probably a little bit of a delay on this one within the next, but definitely within the next week. You can go to our YouTube channel there, listed there in the next week, or you can go there right now, click subscribe, ring the bell, and you'll get an instant update when the session is available. For those of you watching this on demand, not right now, but in the future, take the quiz with an 80% passing rate to receive your continuing ed. For those of you here today, make sure to take the survey that pops up at the end. There's also a secondary survey for those of you in Michigan we'd like you to take on benchmarking that I put in the chat. But otherwise, check your spam at certs@gutenbergcerts.com and you will receive your continuing ed if you've been here for the whole CU hour. And a huge thanks to our board of directors, our volunteers, our executive director, Jose Reyna, and all of our members, nearly 500. We're trying to reach 500 for our 25th year anniversary by the end of the year. So if you haven't signed up yet, please do. Otherwise, a huge thanks too to our sponsors who are helping put in the products that make the benchmarking numbers go down, right? Rheem, Tamarack Ventilation, Panasonic, Build Equinox, Timber HP, them and all of our sponsors who support our work and help people decarbonize and eventually reduce their energy usage. Um, yeah, so Caitlin, there was, I guess, kind of um, so some other questions that came in here is the EUI site or source EUI?
I was trying, I was like, I can't believe I don't know the answer to that question. Um, it's site.
I
I had to check real quick. It's site.
okay. I imagine though you do you get source data? Do you get carbon
I don't know if
uh
that's, I need to, I, I need to, I need to answer that again. I need to
yeah,
check and make sure I'm right because
yeah,
it takes into consideration e-grid factors, which
yeah,
suggests to me that it's source. But I know we can do site and source.
yeah,
So I just have to remind myself which is being presented here.
yeah.
And then also somebody said just as long as it's EUI, which it is, you can see this is BTU per
Yeah,
square foot per heating degree day.
yeah,
So these are all
yeah,
EUI and WUI.
yeah. And I know Portfolio Manager gives you both, and so I assume the answer then too is, of course, if you're porting data right into there, you can get in and see both site and source, right? I mean,
Right.
yeah. But of course, the next kind of thought that came up is just in the event that there is, the Energy Star portfolio manager goes offline or it's disabled or defunded or who knows what. Um, are you aware of any conversations that are going on? I know they're happening on the new construction single family side of like what comes after, when Energy Star goes away for new construction, right? But are you aware of conversations that are going on of like what is filling the void on the existing building side?
If Energy Star Portfolio Manager goes away,
Yeah, yeah.
no, no one knows what's going to happen. It's
Okay.
like, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a big,
Yeah.
I mean, at the moment it seems like it's safe, but we don't really know.
Right.
And yeah, you can't really privatize it because that would be a real problem with
Right.
government entities. So I don't know that anybody exactly knows what would happen with these benchmarking programs were
Sure.
that to go away.
Sure, sure. And then just a quick question while you're here and being from New York, and really any place that is shifting to electrification, um, and concerns that people might have that, if there are requirements to move towards electric construction, that, electric rates will just skyrocket. I know you can't answer all of that, but maybe the question for you then here is just, are you seeing just with your current building stock, if new construction all electric projects are getting entered in, and whether those, are maintaining affordable rates? Like, I guess that's the question. Maybe I'll put it to you. So,
Hmm. I mean, I would say any building that is
mm,
constructed can be good or bad
right,
depending on whether it was commissioned
right.
properly. And one can see that in a benchmarking platform, whether or not it's performing to an expected level. But certainly, affordable properties are being built to high environmental standards and are maintaining.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, and it's like, how is it built? I mean, we came across, someone was like, yeah, we're building all electric, we're doing great. And then you kind of look behind the scenes and you've got resistance heaters, right? You've got resistance HVAC, you've got resistance water heater. And we're like, well, this is gonna not work out so well for you, right? Yes,
Hmm.
it's all electric. You get a congratulations for that, but it was the wrong system, right? we got to do
Hmm.
heat pumps
Hmm.
to cut costs. So, well, yeah, I don't see any other specific questions here. So I guess, Caitlin, can you just remind people where they can go to learn more, find out more, and uh, uh, get, you know, get involved if they want to?
If you wanted to know about energy scorecards in particular, you could go to brightpower.com and you could reach out to me at CROOD@brightpower.com. I
Hmm.
don't think my contact information is in there, so I can add it into the deck so that you have that information.
Hmm.
And then I think you all know how to learn more about Energy Star Portfolio Manager, but I'm happy to talk to anybody about any questions you might have.
Yeah. All right. Well, Caitlin, again, thank you so much for coming back on the show recently to have this conversation with us and our audience. And thanks to Bright Power for, all the great work and having you come out and everything they're doing. So thank you so much. Take care. Be well, all. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Be sure to check out all of our courses available online that you can watch anytime and anywhere to pick up your CEUs. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube to get weekly updates and stay up to date on green building science courses, webinars, and home tours. Thanks again.